Hi, it's Make It Month 8 and this month we're looking at etching. So etching metal. Etching is a process that you can use to eat away or etch away certain parts of your metal while leaving other parts untouched to create patterns or textures. You can do writing, you can do quite intricate things, or you can sort of block out areas. It's completely up to you. In jewellery terms, there's two main ways of going about it. You can either do something called acid etching, which is where you use an acid to etch or eat away at metal, or you can do electro etching, which is what we are primarily going to concentrate on this month. But to be fair, the process for both, in terms of preparing your metal, is pretty much the same. So no matter which way you want to try etching in the future, the prep bit, which we're going to go over in a second, should be fairly similar for both techniques. So I hope that you follow along, and I hope that you share the things that you use to do this if you've done it before. Etching can be one of those techniques where it seems really daunting, primarily because you're using chemicals or physics and then my brain just wants to melt, or electricity, anodes and cathodes, and So hopefully when we go through it, I'm going to try and explain it the best I can, and I'm going to try and make it easier to understand for everybody. And the other reason why it can be really confusing and a bit daunting is because there's a lot of conflicting information out there, and that's primarily because there's so many different ways that you can do it. So everybody's got their favourite techniques, everybody's got their favourite acids or electrolytes that we use to do this technique. So if you look into this yourself, you'll probably find that you'll read one article and then it will seem to be completely different to another article that you read further down the line. And again, I'm going to try and explain that a little bit as we go along, but bear with me. With acid etching, which is the more traditional technique, you use an acid normally to eat away at the metal, and normally that's ferric chloride if you're working with copper and brass, or ferric nitrate if you're working with silver. Now, one of the reasons that I want to focus on electro etching rather than acid etching is because I just don't like working with acids, with things that are that strong. In theory, a lot of people think that ferric chloride isn't that strong, but I've had so many issues with it over the years when other people have been using it, and it has just ruined and damaged thousands of pounds worth of my tools and equipment and resources, because it's one of those things where you think you cleaned it up and got rid of it, and then it just reappears because it can develop over time. And ferric nitrate is nastier in terms of eating away at things and for your skin and health and safety measures. So I'm going to be focusing on the electro etching because it's a little bit safer and easier to handle. But like I say, you can get lots of other acids and chemicals to do this process with, and the same with the electro etching. So electro etching normally uses salts or other minerals, which is why it gets called salt etching quite a lot. So again, that adds to the confusion because you're reading about electro etching and then you read another article and it's talking about salt etching, and quite often the two articles don't mention both terms, so you would think they were completely different things. The salt or the minerals you normally mix with water to create an electrolyte. An electrolyte is just a fancy term for a solution that can conduct electricity, and then we use some sort of power or electricity to make a current, and that's what's going to help do the etching with a few other bits and bobs, but we're going to be looking at that in more detail. But to begin with, I just want to talk to you about prepping metal and the different things you can use as resists. So the general idea is you take your metal and you apply a resist to it. A resist is just something that can resist the acid or the salt-based solution. It can resist being etched or eaten away. It's a barrier that protects the metal from being etched or eaten away. And there's so many different things that you can use as resists, which we'll go over separately. So once you have your resist on, so you have some areas protected, some areas exposed and left just as exposed metal, and then you take your metal, you put it into your chosen solution, so whether that's an acid base or a salt's electrolyte, and then you allow that solution to etch and eat away at the exposed parts of the metal. Once it's etched to the depth that you're happy with, you can then take it out, clean it up in whichever way you need to do it, depending on the process that you're working with, and you should be left with a nice textured piece of metal with your original design showing on it. So lots of different types of resists. A really popular one is nail polish. So simple as that. A lot of these resists that we're going to be talking about are really, really cheap, accessible things, and some of them you will already have. Potentially, you may already have a permanent ink pad, which I've had for 2 seconds and already managed to wipe all over myself. I'm just going to take that off. So like I say, nail polish is a good one. You paint that onto the surface, and you can either paint your design on, or you can paint the entire surface and then scratch areas away to reveal a design, or you can get these little nail art kits, so little stencils and a little dabber to do sort of intricate designs. Anything where you can get a good layer of nail polish onto metal so that it's thick enough to act as a resist. And generally speaking, they say the darker the colour the better, because it's easier to see, you've got good coverage. Another really good resist is just tape. So Parcel Tape is really good for covering large areas, and you could cut little bits of Parcel Tape away or cut strips and sort of cross hatch it and stuff, but generally speaking it's used when you need to cover a large area, for example the back of your piece. So you want to protect the whole of the back of the piece and not get etched. But equally you can buy fancy tapes, it's like sticker tapes. Normally find these in card making supplies, craft supply shops, and they will do a similar job. And the nice thing about this is they are a predefined pattern, so they already have some areas cut away and some areas that are going to mask over the top of your metal and protect it from being etched. The next really popular one is Sharpie. And I've only just realised that a lot of people don't know what Sharpie is. I've had so many people asking me, because at the end of the day it is a brand name. That's all it is. It's a brand name for a permanent marker, but they're considered good quality ones, which is why quite often if you read tutorials on these sort of techniques, they might specifically say Sharpie rather than something a little bit cheaper. And you can also get Sharpies as sort of more permanent, a more permanent marker, a bit more of a heavy duty one, a bit more oil based. And you can get paint pens. So again, anything like this gives you a bit of control to draw patterns and things that you want to do, but it's going to dry off to a hardened paint surface, similar to the nail polish techniques that we were talking about. Then we have card stickers and nail stickers. So exactly the same idea. They're made of a plasticky substance, and you can peel them away and you're left with a nice little intricate design that you can put onto your metal. It will act as a resist, and then the exposed areas are going to get eaten away. And as I sort of showed you a minute ago, is the permanent marker pad. So if anybody has rubber stamps or any old crafting supplies lying around, or the sort of things that you can pick up cheaply, you can rubber stamp onto your design, onto your metal as a resist. But it's really important that it's a permanent ink pad, not a generic water-based ink pad, because it needs to have a bit of longevity when it's in the wet solution. So most of the resists so far have been reliant on pre-made textures, apart from maybe the nail polish and the paint pens, where you can get a little bit more creative and do your own thing. But the next ones you can have a little bit more creativity with. So here we have some sticky vinyl, or sticky back plastic as I would always call it. So again, it's a plasticky substance, but thin enough that you can cut areas of it either by hand with a scalpel or scissors if you're not doing anything too intricate, or you can get craft punches such as these. So basically fancy hole punches in lots of different designs. You can get these cutting machines, so you either get the sort of slightly cheaper ones where you buy dies and cutters for them, from craft stores, or you can buy the more expensive ones where you load your designs into a computer, anything that you've drawn or taken from the internet, and it will cut intricate shapes out of this. And then lastly, the only one that isn't quite as accessible as the rest, but you can still find it fairly easy, is press and peel paper, or it normally gets called P&P paper. It's a blue paper, and you can print designs onto it. So anything that you've drawn or designed on a computer, or silhouettes that you've bought the rights to, you can print on it, but it needs to be a laser printer or a laser photocopier, rather than an inkjet one, which just makes it a little bit trickier. But if you know anyone that's got a laser photocopy or a laser printer, or the price of buying your own laser printer has come right down, then the P&P paper can give you a bit more, the options for more creativity, more intricate designs of your own design, rather than slightly more rudimentary stickers and hand cutting and hand scratching areas away. So the first thing I need to do is prepare my metal before I put the resist onto it. Now I've got some little pre-cut shapes here. These are little copper ones, but generally speaking, you don't always want to highly refine your edge before etching, because there's always a chance that the etchant could nibble away at the edge slightly and you're going to end up having to refile and resand again. So it's a balance between having your metal in good enough condition that, you know, once you've got your design on there, that you're not having to do a ton of sanding and end up sanding away the design that you've etched into your metal. But equally, you don't want to spend ages making it absolutely perfect, because the chances are, like I say, that the etching solution is going to nibble away at the surface or the edges slightly, and you're going to have to redo that prep. So just to give it a quick generic clean, I'm going to use some super fine wire wool and just give it a little scrub. Once I've given it a generic quick clean with some wire wool, I now need to make sure that it's grease free, because any grease or oils from my fingertips are going to get in the way of my resist sticking as well as it could do, but it could also end up leaving little fingerprint marks on my etched piece if I'm not careful. So one of the quickest and easiest ways to degrease it is to use acetone. Now acetone is not the same as nail polish remover. Nail polish remover is much more gentle. Quite often it has moisturising agents or oils mixed into it, which is going to do the complete opposite of what we want this to do, which is to remove any oils or degrease it. So it's important that you use acetone, but what you might find is you can't find this anywhere. And the reason being is a lot of shops hide it in the back. So I went to pick up a new bottle from Boots today and I had to physically go and ask somebody. They went and got it from the back because there's none of it on the shelf. There's no sign that they stock it. So it's always worth asking. Acetone can be drying for your skin if it's in contact with your skin for too long. And you certainly don't want to splash it in your eyes or anything like that. So I've just popped some gloves on the hand that I'm going to be primarily using. I'm going to open it up. I've got a little cotton pad and I'm just going to put some acetone onto that cotton pad, and then I'm going to put the lid back on because I am a klutz and I know I'm going to end up knocking this bottle over otherwise. So lid back on, nice and safe, and then I'm going to give this a quick rub. And that's my piece of metal degreased and ready to work with. So I'm going to take my gloves off and go and wash my hands. The first thing I'm going to use as a resist is some sticker design tape, like this stuff. Like I say, craft shops, pound shops, anywhere like that. And because I used the heart one already, I'm going to use some of this white tape this time around. I just need to decide which one I'm going to use. I'm going to cut a section of it. Like so, and then I need to peel it off and stick it onto my piece. And you just need to be careful because the more intricate the tape, the easier it is to tear it when you're unsticking it. I'm going to stick it down onto my design, onto my piece of metal, like so. I'm still trying not to touch the metal, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to burnish this onto my piece. The point of burnishing it is just to make sure it's stuck down nice and tight. So I'm just rubbing it. So if you have a burnisher from the previous month's stone setting tutorials, use that, or if you don't, you can use a teaspoon. So just giving it a good old rub so the tape is stuck as much as it possibly can be to that metal. The other thing with these tapes sometimes is, can you see, that's my pointy stick. Can you see a little bit of it is still full? So there's a little open dot pattern all the way along here, and then there's a little bit there where there's still a little bit of tape stuck in it. So you can use something pointy and sharp to to just pick that out. Or sometimes a pair of sharp tweezers is a good idea. There we go, it is coming. Next up I've got my Sharpie or my permanent marker, and that is how these two are done. So we've got a little robot and a little chimp. I'm going to take my Sharpie and just want to write or draw onto the surface of your metal. You can also get Sharpies that are much finer or even double-sided ones, like this one, where it's got a chunky end and a skinny end. So these are quite good for smaller details.